Hello and welcome to the Scottish Family Party stream. You might be wondering, why is Niall kicking it off today? Well, I'm going to be introducing Richard Lucas and Philip Tanzer just in a minute, but we're going to batter on to why I joined the Scottish Family Party and talk a wee bit about the plans we've got upcoming for the Scottish Family Party. So welcome everyone to the stream. I hope you're all having a great evening. I just wanted to talk very briefly about upcoming plans for the SFP, the Scottish Family Party, to take the fight into the only realms that Hollywood understands, and that is the media. We can't really reveal the full extent of the plans at the moment. We're keeping it a surprise. But if there ever was a time to join the Scottish Family Party, then I would encourage it right this very moment. We are beginning a campaign that will redefine political messaging, redefine political campaigning, and it will allow us to connect to voters on such a deep personal level. And I just very briefly wanted to say a bit about why I joined the Scottish Family Party in the first place. I joined because of a sentiment that many of us in Scotland carry deep within us, a deep and very justified distrust of those in government. I do not trust any of the sitting parties in Holyrood, not a single one of them. And for me, I didn't want to be another spoke in the wheel of corruption. I would rather fight shoulder to shoulder with the righteous. We as a collective are fighting back the hardest against these dangerous and malevolent ideologies that seek to rob Scottish children of their futures. We as a Scottish Family Party are forging the way forward, making it easier for others to follow in our footsteps. We are taking the hard hits so you don't have to, and we are absorbing the blows and dogmatically refusing to go down. All of this is happening under the glorious banner of family, guys. That's why I joined the Scottish Family Party, because in Scotland, it's the only party worth getting out of bed to vote for. And with that, we can bring in Richard Lucas, the leader. How are you doing tonight, Richard?
I'm very well, thank you. I think that's the first time someone's introduced the live stream apart from myself. So thanks very much, Niall, for kicking us off. And we've also got another guest this morning, Phil, another familiar face. Phil, welcome.
Hello, wonderful to be with you guys. And that was a great introduction.
It was. Thanks, Phil. Was stirring words indeed. Yeah, that's Niall's superpower: is putting the right words in the right order. It definitely is.
I'll take it. If there ever was a superpower, I'll take that. I used to like invisibility, but nah. We'll take putting words in the right order.
Yeah. Right, good. Well, there's always lots to talk about in the news. So if you're watching, do throw comments in. We'll try and respond to comments and engage with any issues that you bring up as well. But let's start with something Phil just mentioned before we went live, and that was about ministers in Scotland and the appointment system that seems to operate. Phil, tell us about it. What have you noticed?
So I'm currently trying to organize a cross-party group focused on men's issues in the Scottish Parliament, and because of that, I have to write MSPs all the time, and people that cannot participate in that are ministers, people with ministerial positions. And I had a spreadsheet with everybody who was a minister and everybody who was just an MSP. And after the recent government shake-up, after Nicola Sturgeon unfortunately had to resign and Tanzer Yusuf thankfully won the race, after that, the ministerial positions, they were all changed to the exact same people that held ministerial positions before. But every person who was a minister before got a different ministerial position now. And I was just thinking to myself, wait a second. So either they did a good job as ministers and then they should have stayed in this position, or they did a terrible job, then they should not have gotten a different ministerial position. They should have been kicked out of their position as minister and somebody else should have replaced them. So it was an internal shakeup. And what I'm also wondering, I would assume that if you gain a ministerial position, you have to look into the topic. Let's say you focus on transportation. I would think that you sit down and you read into the topic and you talk to the experts over months and months, and you gain so much knowledge that your knowledge is just too important to be wasted. And now all of these ministers were just put into another position, and they had absolutely no prior knowledge for this position. Does that make any sense? The only thing that makes sense to me is that there were obviously deals being made behind closed doors, and they were just being promised a new ministerial position. But I wonder, why were they replaced? It's difficult for me to make sense of that. Richard, Neil, what are your views?
I mean, we often accuse the SNP of sort of failing upwards, but this one is a case of almost failing sideways. So they've failed sideways in a different ministerial role. So it's very, I mean, if you take Angela Constance is probably the best example. The drugs minister who was presiding over Scotland's worst ever drug death situation, and it continues to rise, and yet she's just been shuffled sideways. She's failed sideways, Phil. For me, I've not got one idea why, but you know, it's again I sort of go back to it's probably these backdoor deals that are happening behind closed doors that we're not privy to, because it doesn't make sense. It does not make sense to me, Richard.
No. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, if I was made a minister of anything, you know, let's say transport, whatever, first thing I'd do is I'd want a load of books about transport policy. And I'd want to sit down with the experts. I'd want to understand it so well that when the civil servants came along and said, "Oh, we're thinking of doing this," I'd be in a position to say, "I don't know, I'm not sure that's a good idea." But if you just go in cold, you're totally at the mercy of the civil servants. They come along, blind you with so-called science and jargon and whatever, and you're not in a position to argue against it. The civil servants are basically running the show. If you can run the show with anyone plugged in at the top, and it just carries on regardless, that means the person at the top isn't really running it. They're just a spokesperson. They're just a front for the operation. And I think it's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
We're getting some decent comments coming in. Just basically, good evening, everyone. So the comments are working. Please do get them in the chat, and we'll address any questions. They do come forward. Some good ones tonight.
Charles, enjoyed your introduction. Quite right.
Thanks you very much.
Quite right too. Right, but also, how about juryless trials? That's been a big story. It's a growing story, I would say. It's just that I almost think, has something just changed in Scotland? That suddenly professions and individuals who just towed the line and kept their head down and now think, well, hang on a minute, we're not going to have this. We're going to fight back a bit. Because it seems like more or less, not entirely, but like more or less the legal profession is boycotting the SNP's, well, the Scottish government's experiment. I don't use the word trial too many times. Experiment in juryless trials in sexual assault and rape cases. I mean, that is just amazing, isn't it? Having a profession basically turning against a government policy like that. And they're going to be sunk.
And to be honest, I'm honestly shocked that they're doing this. I thought that big parts of the legal structure are already, let's say, in the pocket of the feminist lobby groups. But it seems like at least the ones higher up in the hierarchy are not, which I'm very surprised. Now, to be honest, the whole argument with the juryless trial is that the jury might be influenced by so-called rape myths, and that they might not understand, have a deep understanding in violence against women and girls. In other words, they're not indoctrinated yet. They have just normal common sense. Now, as far as I know, I'm almost certain that I'm correct that in Scottish universities where law is taught, they have feminist law. So they actually have courses that focus on ideology-driven law, and there are barristers and lawyers and judges, not just in the UK but worldwide. It's a network, and they're pushing for feminist law. And even there's something that doesn't sound as bad. There's something called victim-focused laws. But if you can't know who the victim is until you have a fair trial. So it is not victim focused, it is accuser focused,
Yes.
which means that the accused, per definition, will not get a fair trial. And it's the same thing, just not mentioning women and men, it's just victim and perpetrator, but it's just as bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very
with justice
succinct
system,
description. Yeah, it's very good.
Go on now.
No, it's a very, very great description you've given us there. It's almost accuser-driven rather than victim-driven, and it's a very, very important distinction you've just made there. It's, I mean, sort of reading some of the comments, Charles McEwen, juryless trials means show trials will be the order of the day. It means you can't be acquitted by a jury of your peers, which is something that we should all demand. To be, if you're ever in a legal situation like that, you would want to be judged by a jury of your peers. Absolutely, as is your right. And where does that leave us on a UK-wide basis as well? Can I demand a court in England to take my case rather than a court in Scotland if they're doing this sort of thing? It's pandemonium.
Well, obviously, if they would introduce this scheme, this experimental scheme of juryless trials, I mean, all the guilty verdicts would go to a retrial, I would think, because I mean, it's just insane.
Yeah. I mean, their target is to get more convictions.
Yeah.
But the target should always be to make sure you get the right convictions.
Yes.
You want the guilty people found guilty, you want the innocent people found, but they don't want that. They just want more people found guilty. That's the target. And as soon as you do that,
now there are in an article I read today that in rape cases, 51% lead to a conviction compared to other crimes where the average is 91%. Now, to be honest, I'm quite surprised that it's as high as 51%. Some of these cases that go to trial probably should never have gotten to trial because of lack of evidence. And the big problem is, and that was a statement by the lawyers, and it's common sense, in cases of sexual violence, usually there are no witnesses and it's one word against another.
Yeah, it's the word of one drunk person against another drunk person.
Yeah. And let's be honest, there will be many victims that do not get justice, and that is terrible. And I don't dispute that also a lot of victims, both female and male, never come forward because they don't see a chance. They don't see like they have a chance, which is tragic. But our legal system is built on a fair trial, and if there is no evidence, we can't put people in prison.
No. But I know someone, a lawyer, who defends people accused of rape and sexual assault. And they say already the system is skewed very, very badly against the accused. And you're basically not allowed to bring evidence. So for example, if a man and woman in a hotel room one night, they have sex, the woman accused him of rape. If she then texts him the next morning and says, "Hey, come back to my hotel room, let's have sex again," then that text is not admissible evidence in the case. You cannot bring that in.
That is insane.
Yeah, it's literally insane.
Which is absolutely bonkers. And it's similar to things said before as well. And also, if you've got evidence that the accuser is a compulsive liar, that's inadmissible.
Or if the accuser has done this several times before.
Yeah. So already now, the system is very, very skewed. Yep.
Now I want to mention something, and that's not Scotland. But I would assume, Richard, both you and Neil, you agree that Harvey Weinstein deserves to be in prison, right?
I didn't follow the case properly, but yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah.
And that is the correct answer, Richard. So I followed the case, and I got to say, is he a sleazebag? Probably, most likely. I mean, it seems like he lived quite an immoral lifestyle. I don't dispute that he had sexual relations to some of these women, but it is. I looked at the case, and he should have never gotten into prison. It was two women accused him, and it was exactly what you said, Richard. After the alleged rape, they kept in contact with him and said, "Oh, I miss you so much." And they weren't even in. They weren't working in the business anymore. They weren't in the same city, so there was no power dynamic anymore. They just contacted him because they wanted favors. They wanted to be invited to galas, and they said, "Oh, I miss you. I miss our time together." Sorry, but you can't have it. Uh,
Yeah,
it,
I
it
understand what you're saying. I never knew
and,
that
and,
about the case, Philip. I never knew
but,
that.
but but because he's powerful and wealthy, and because he comes across like a sleazebag, um, even people the on the side of fair trials didn't really look into it or turned a blind eye because they said, well, it's Hollywood, it's immoral, he's probably guilty. But even if he is guilty, he deserves a fair trial. And if there is no evidence, he shouldn't be in prison right now. But in America, we've seen it at least twice or three times now. We've seen it with Harvey Weinstein. We saw it with, I think his name is Charles Chauvin, the man who potentially caused the death of George Floyd.
Yes.
Both of them did not get a fair trial because the jury was very much informed about the case and knew that they had to give a guilty verdict. Otherwise, the jury would have been, executed, so to speak.
Yeah.
Even not physically executed, but executed in the public opinion.
Yeah. I think with the Harvey Weinstein thing, people are saying the women coming forward were very brave to come and tell their stories. I mean, in some cases, I could accept that. That's very possible. On the other hand, there might have been some women who thought, this is really awful. I hate him. But you know what? I want to be in this film. So I'm willing. You know, I hate it, but if this is what you need to do, I'm going to do it. And that's that.
There was just an interesting comment, the last comment from Bruce 5002.
Yeah, I know. It's the absolute opposite of what we're saying here, Bruce. Absolute opposite.
But I think it's an important comment. The thing is, what we are doing is we come out in favor of fair trials.
Yes.
Everybody should get a fair trial. Even a murderer, even a rapist should get a fair trial and then get the correct punishment. I'm in favor of sometimes even harsher punishments that people get. But I still want people to get a fair trial. So I'm not on the side of rapists. I'm on the side of justice. That's a huge difference.
Massive.
Yeah.
And great to bring that up as well. I mean, it's important to address the bad comments as much as the good ones, but I mean, that one right out of left field. And I can't agree more with you, Philip, that it's all about fair trial here. It's not about taking sides. I mean, it's taking the legal side of things rather than anything else.
Yeah. And I think so I'm a Christian. I know Richard is a Christian. I don't know about you, but from a legal standpoint, but also from a Christian standpoint, I want even perpetrators to be treated just. Not nice, but just. Like everybody deserves a fair trial, a just trial. And if our legal system says we try to rehabilitate people, then we have to try to rehabilitate people. If we don't want to do that, then we probably need capital punishment, and that's another conversation that we could have.
Right. Here's an issue. This is something from Scottish Family Party policies that's relevant to this. So what can happen now is someone can. Let's use rape as an illustration. So a woman can accuse a man of rape. It goes to court, like not guilty or not proven. So what they can then do is take it to civil court and have another try. And in civil court, of course, the standard of proof isn't beyond reasonable doubt. It's balance of probability.
Yeah.
So it's far, far easier to get the verdict your way and then just to claim compensation. But the accused they're still labeled and referred to as a rapist from then on. And their reputation is absolutely destroyed on the basis of balance of probability. And family party policy is that you shouldn't be able to have this second bite of the cherry, if you like. If you're unsuccessful with a criminal conviction, then that's it. You can't then take it to civil court.
Yeah.
Now,
and also, for example, I think in the family court, as soon as there is an allegation of domestic violence or sexual abuse, I think it has to be moved to the criminal court because a crime happened, and there needs to be a higher burden of proof. Unfortunately, that's not happening at the moment.
Yeah. Now, I'm sort of directly involved in this a little bit at the moment because some of you probably know I'm taking a former employer to court. The case is coming towards this conclusion at the moment for fraud. Now, fraud is obviously a crime, so it's very serious. But the understanding is in the civil court that the standard of proof required is more demanding because fraud is such a serious matter, and that's just a well-established principle. But the way I see it, but I think when it comes to something like rape, I don't think there is a higher standard required. I think it's just treated the same as, as if you haven't paid your rent or something.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think there's, attention needed to that issue. Right, where shall we?
I want to bring an example. Just it's adjacent. A local man, he was accused of sexual abuse, pretty much, and he didn't have a car. I drove him to the police station, which was 1.5 hours away, and he was then arrested. So, but I think that's normal standard. Like when you go to the police, I think they kind of have to arrest you when they question you. So they took all his stuff away, and then they took him into a room. And what then happened? So it was 3 women were interrogating him about his sexual fantasies, what porn he watches, how often he masturbates. There was no lawyer present, and they didn't even tell him if he had to answer or not, which obviously is a completely inappropriate situation. Could you imagine that would have happened with a woman? If a woman was accused of something like that, and then 3 men would be in a room with that woman, asking the woman about her sexual fantasies, practices, and what kind of porn she watches. And I couldn't believe that something like that was even legal here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds bizarre. Bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to the coronation. And the particular issue that's of interest to us in the coronation is Humza Yousaf. Now, Humza Yousaf is developing a bit of a dodgy record about his reasons why he was or wasn't at things. Because during the leadership campaign, I seem to recall Humza Yousaf said he was going to go to the independence rally in Glasgow that clashed with the coronation. It was at the same time as the coronation. Then he seemed to be saying he was going to go to both. I'm not sure how that. I think we must have going to have a stunt double or something to do that. And he ended up going to the coronation. Now, just alongside that as well, it made me think of Kate Forbes as well. When the Queen died, Kate Forbes tweeted something, thank you, Your Majesty, for your years of wonderful service type thing. But the last I heard, she was going to be speaking at this independence rally, deliberately timed to clash with the coronation. So where do we stand with the SNP and the monarchy, or your thoughts in general? What's going on here? Are the SNP just scared of public opinion, so they keep their true views under their hat a little bit? No,
I don't think Humza knows where to put his eggs. I mean, first of all, he says, I'm the First Minister for all of Scotland, and yet I'm not going to go to the coronation. In fact, I'm going to go to the independence debate. In fact, I've cancelled that. I'm going to the coronation instead, but I will show up. I will look dour-faced and not participate in singing. I won't participate in any singing. and I'll just look dour-faced the entire time. Kate Forbes actually pulled out of this march or the speech at the last minute as well. So these politicians, their word is absolutely worthless at this point. Absolutely worthless. I think Hamza is walking, like you said, the tightrope of public opinion, and I think he's fell off. I mean, he's totally fell off the tightrope. There's no way to go. The walls are closing in on him. And, you know, the whole coronation, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I thought it was magnificent. I thought the music was sublime. I thought the whole ceremony went absolutely fantastically. And for Hamza to sort of do Scotland down on a global scale was particularly galling to me as well. Particularly galling.
My view is a little bit more sympathetic. I think that Hamza Yusuf did the right thing going to the coronation. He shouldn't have proclaimed that he's not going, but in the end, I think he did the right thing. And I also think that for a Muslim who is probably, I mean, we can all assume that against the monarchy, having to sing Christian hymns, I actually think it's okay that he didn't sing. Did he have to look dour faced? Maybe not, but he was there. He could have dealt with the situation with a little bit more dignity, but I will not accuse him for not singing hymns that don't represent his religion. I think we have religious freedom, and but on the other hand, and this is a little sidetrack, while I did like the coronation for King Charles to really win me over, I think there would have had to be a little bit more pizzazz, more clear, a clear positioning towards the Christian faith and not faiths in general.
That's a really, very, very balanced answer, Philip. Very balanced indeed. Perfect.
That's an interesting question about the different faiths. I'm sort of in two minds about that, because the monarchy, I mean, the traditions of the service are explicitly, well, not just Christian, Protestant as well. They're Protestant. So, I mean, the role of the king, if he's going to be, you know, a uniting figurehead for the whole of the nation, then it needs to reach out beyond that. So I don't know the way it was done. It wasn't done in a way that it ended up with a whole mishmash of contradictory beliefs being put alongside each other under the banner of, you know, it doesn't matter because we're all holding hands together. It wasn't like that, but other people were involved in it. So I was sort of happy with the balance of that, I would say, because it is a very difficult situation to deal with. But in terms of Hamza Yusuf, like not agreeing with the words of the songs, I don't think Hamza Yusuf's, as far as I can tell, has got any sort of personal principles like that would be relevant to it. I just yeah. I think Alex Salmond, he was a sort of monarchy supporter a few years ago, and he's now completely against it. Now, the Scottish Family Party is neutral on Scottish independence. Let's just clarify that before we start. But I seem to be detecting a shift in the independence movement, and it seems to be going back to the way it was when I first came to Scotland. When I first came to Scotland, they were campaigning on all sorts of really wacky things. They wanted the Duke of Wellington's statue taken away from the end of Princes Street, for example. They wanted the Queen's coat of arms taken off post boxes and this sort of thing. I mean, it was really pitiful sort of things. But it seems to be there's a bit of a revival in that. Like Alex Salmond saying, he would have had the Police Scotland forming a ring around the Stone of Destiny so they couldn't take it and use it. I mean, it seems like it's going back to the older days. Now, is that indicating a sort of even more polarization or sort of hardening of the fundamentalist wing of the independence movement? I don't know. What do you think?
It's interesting. I'm actually writing an article now because a disabled woman from the nationalist side of the argument reached out to me, of all people, from the unionist side, asking for help. The infighting in the infight that is the nationalism is getting really quite disgusting, actually. So I'm writing an article about that, and that'll probably be finished later in the week. But you're right. There's sort of a lot of different factions in this nationalist infighting now, and it is really quite horrible, the attacks that people are facing, even from people that are supposedly on the same side. So really, I think it's because it's all based on hatred and nastiness. That's sort of overflowing into people who are not agreeing specifically with one party or specifically another party. It must be, the nationalists' cause, Alex Salmond's causing them to go on all under one banner when they're all so disparate in groups. And I just think I don't think anyone can really herd them all together. I don't think even Alex Salmond's got the power to do that. No one has.
No, that's the situation on the unionist side, isn't it? With the idea of all unionists united in one party, I mean, that would be laughable. It would never happen. But the nationalists are sort of
we can dream.
Managed this, but
Can I say something about the attack against the the monarchy, so to speak? I think that the progressive side is like Sauron from Lord of the Rings, and the Eye of Sauron just looks at certain issues one at a time, so to speak. And when for a time it was racial division, and they were all putting all their energy into focusing on racial division and stoking racial hatred, I would say. And right now, due to the coronation, the new focus is against the monarchy. But in the end, all they're doing is trying to dismantle traditions and culture and systems that were in place. The next thing might be again a focus. Well, we also have a focus now on the justice system. The next thing might be the police again. I would say the monarchy is just part of culture and structure that the progressive left wants to dismantle. And I find it quite ironic that King Charles is, I would say, on the progressive side with his environmentalism and globalism and all of that. And no matter how much he caters to the side, they still want to tear him down. And
it's so funny, isn't it?
I wish that people like him would actually just say, look, I tried to be nice. You still attacked me. Now I'm just gonna move over to the other side. That I think that would be hilarious. But we also see it in big corporations. In a month's time, I think it's Gay Month again, LGBT Month, and you will see a lot of companies with the rainbow flag in their banners. And it's funny because the companies that bow to that are still being attacked by the LGBT community for not doing enough. Kind of like, but you're still selling Coca-Cola in Muslim countries. You shouldn't do that. While companies that don't use a rainbow flag, nobody cares about them. They're not being attacked. It's actually so it's funny that the people that try to cater to the progressive side, they actually get more attacks than everybody else.
You'd hate to be the executive for advertising at one of these companies. You wouldn't know where to go.
Well, it's very easy. Don't cater to them. Just sell your product. Don't be political. Don't be a political activist. And that's what I would hope for the king as well. Don't be a political activist. Do your job just like your mother did.
Very well said, Philip. Very well said indeed.
I think you're quite right. Once you start compromising with people with a sort of aggressive agenda, then as soon as they see you've taken a step back and compromised, they think, right, let's put even more pressure on. We'll get them to take another step back.
Little finger, the whole hand.
Yeah, and that often happens with individuals. There's been quite a few cases of people involved in the family party who, in some cases, have ended up withdrawing completely because of pressure from their family. It can be a spouse, or it can be children in some cases as well, where they basically deliver an ultimatum to the family member saying, you've got to stop doing such and such a thing. And I always say to people, what you need to do in that situation is decide for yourself what compromise you're going to make with them. And then when you've decided, tell them that that's it. Because if they're thinking it's still game on, if they just throw a few more toys out of the pram, if they're just a bit more stroppy, put a bit more pressure on, they'll get you to retreat a bit more. Then that's a motive for them to keep trying, to keep being more and more unreasonable. So we're saying, draw a line somewhere. Say, right, this is it. I've listened to what you've got to say, and so okay, fair enough. I won't do this if you want to make any compromise at all. But then, so right, that's it. That's it, though. That's it. Forget it now. That's my decision.
Today I watched a video from the Lotus Eaters, and it was about different topics, but the last bit was about Donald Trump, and he is currently in some trial for sexual whatever. So he's just being attacked by more and more people with nonsense.
Yeah, he got found guilty just very recently. He just got found guilty. Well, he was given a settlement. He's been cleared of rape claims, but he's been convicted of sexual abuse. So I think it's a $5 million settlement he's been ordered to pay, and that's within the last few hours, Philip. Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna look that up. But I looked into the trial, and it really made me laugh because the lawyer of the accuser said, you said she wouldn't have been your first choice. What did you mean by that? And then he said, well, I don't find her attractive at all. I would never have interest in her. And to be quite frank, neither would I have interest in you. You're absolutely not my type. And so she insulted the lawyer. And to be honest, and like he did not apologize. And I mean, you can think about his behavior or like the way he expresses himself. You can think about that whatever you want to, but I applaud him for not apologizing, because these people do not act in good faith. If you did something wrong and somebody asks for an apology and they act in good faith, by all means, please apologize. But if they only use an apology to take you down, to attack you more, don't do it. Don't do it.
If you apologise as well, you just cede ground to these ideologues as well. They just take that ground and push harder. Never apologise, never back down. And like you said, Philip, unless you've legitimately done something wrong.
I think that's the key thing. Apologise if you genuinely think you've done something wrong, but don't apologise to appease. Partly because it's dishonest, but it just makes it worse. It just makes them think, "Oh, right, let's have another shot.
Let's attack them further." Yes.
By the way, there was a question from Bruce 5002. I can answer it in the or I can say it now. Yes. So the question was, just wondering, Philip, do you think children have a right to excuse themselves from hymn singing religious participation at schools in Scotland? Now, I actually have two different views on that. The one view is that either my original view was take all indoctrination out of schools. So I think there shouldn't be left-leaning indoctrination. There shouldn't be right-leaning indoctrination. There shouldn't be religious indoctrination. And I think I don't think that children should be forced to participate in religious practices that are not part of their faith. So that's one answer. But I recently watched a very interesting segment talking about that education is always indoctrination in one way or the other. And for decades now, the left has indoctrinated children in one direction. And just saying, let's just stop indoctrinating, you're actually not addressing the problems that we currently have, and you have to start indoctrinating, educating children towards values again. Now, does that have to include singing hymns? Not sure about that, but I think moral values, good behavior like discipline, respect your parents, respect teachers, and so on. And I would say, that's the basic. And most of our values are based on Christian values. Even if not all of our laws, are in one way or another based on Christian faith. So I'm sorry if I don't give a absolutely clear answer, but
it's a
my
difficult one, Philip, isn't it?
yeah
It's very
yeah
difficult.
I wish that we could just say, hey, let's just be neutral. But unfortunately, we don't live in a neutral society. And as a conservative leaning person, I'm at a point where I'm like, you know what? The people on the left have been attacking children for such a long time. It's time to protect children, and protecting children, from my point of view,
Yeah.
is a conservative approach.
Yeah, I think you're quite right. There's no such thing as neutral education. So if you have a school that has no religious element at all, then that school is teaching that religion is not relevant to the children's education. In terms of hymns, I think this is what Charles McEwen's saying here. I think if there's choice of schools, that's really helpful. So if parents have chosen to put their children in a school with a certain ethos, then that's really good. But even in general, the hymn singing thing, okay, if you've got some budding young atheist who doesn't want to sing the hymns, okay, stand there and don't sing. I mean, that's fine. I think it is a complex issue, but I think part of education should be presenting young people with a value system, with a philosophy of life, that's a really important part of education. And if you decide you're not going to do that through religion, then you're going to have to do it through some other means. And the other means normally ends up being children's rights, lefty, liberal, secular, progressive ideology, and that's what's happened in Scotland. But yeah, it is a tricky issue.
What Philip was, it's very, very delicate, this, isn't it? I mean, you can't, even if you're sort of taking religion out of the school, the country's still set on Christian values, like you were saying, Philip. I mean, the laws are all based on Christian values as well. So it's, how do you extricate that while, or how do you extricate religion while keeping that in place? It's a very, very delicate issue, that. So, I mean, it does take a lot of intellectual thought for it to get there.
I think we have to do some soul searching, and we have to decide: are we a Christian country or are we a neutral country? If we are a Christian country, then I think we should be unapologetically Christian, and in that case, we should sing hymns in schools, and we should teach Christian values. If we are a neutral country, then we have to maximize neutrality. But as a Christian, and actually, even if I was a non-Christian, I think we reached a point. It is very obvious that if you don't have an identity, then other identities will take over. And
Yes.
I'd rather have a Christian identity in a Christian country than another identity like wokeism or communism or something else taking over. So to me, religion is a defense. It's an ideological defense, because there will be an ideology, and I'd rather have a Christian ideology than something else.
Very well put,
I would say I'm not sure what a Christian country means. If you mean a Christian majority country, then that's one thing. But to declare Britain is officially, historically, a sort of Christian country in terms of its constitution, etc. But another way to think of it is, imagine if you're in a country where most people are Muslims. Would you want that country to be declared a Muslim country?
I would be okay with that as long as other faiths are tolerated. And there are some countries where that is the case. I have a lot of respect for people of all faiths, to be honest. I find their points of views very fascinating, and in many ways, I think modern Christians can learn a lot from the dedication that some Muslims have. And I'm not talking about Islamists, I'm talking about Muslims.
Okay, let's move on. We've you're okay for time still, Niall, or do you need to?
Yeah, I'm okay for time. We could run the extra 15, yeah.
Good. So 20-minute neighbourhoods, Scotland's version of 15-minute cities. Now, this is a topic that's been setting the internet alight. There's been quite a bit of media coverage as well. I made a video about it this week. I read the Scottish government's document about it. Wow, it's so boring, so repetitive and dull. But anyway, I got through it, so I made a video. So what's your take on it? Have you followed this issue much in Scotland?
Of course, I've been following it around the globe. I mean, it wasn't first postulated here in Britain. It was postulated elsewhere in the West. This is a sort of World Economic Forum, globalist, New World Order type shuffling us into a new era of humanity where everything's catered for us. We rent everything. We never own anything. We see it in the sort of you'll eat the bugs. We've seen meat taken off the menus in Edinburgh. The 15-minute cities to me is the 15-minute prison. You know, the carbon tax credits, you're restricted in your movement, restricted in your purchases. Everything's watched. There is no privacy. It is Orwell times a million. So yes, I think we should refuse to take it. I mean, just point blank refuse for it to be implemented. There is no other way to say it than that. It's a gulag we're creating for different sections of society. Absolutely horrendous idea. I think it's disgusting, and it can only come from malevolent sources. This idea only.
I would say I would say I cannot share my opinion on these neighborhoods because I don't want to get the party in trouble.
Fair enough.
I would say I'm more moderate. I would say. I think, it is an international fashion. That's for sure. They're not being introduced because the people of Dundee are really keen on it. They don't care what the people of Dundee think. They care what the UN and various other people think. It's been driven by all sorts of agendas that say nothing to do with local people. And I do think a fundamental part of it is to restrict travel by cars, basically. Because anti-car is like the driving force. It gives meaning and purpose to a substantial part of the political establishment, certainly in Scotland, very definitely. So at the moment in Scotland, they're all saying, no, it's not about restricting travel. But eventually it will be. I mean, they're basically anti-car. So they're trying to block roads and make it impossible to park. They're bragging about like building blocks of flats with no parking whatsoever. And this is the way of the future. But eventually, you can just imagine it's a very small step, as has already happened in England, that they're going to start saying, we're going to count how many times you drive across the boundary. Or we're going to ration how you can drive around Edinburgh. I mean, it's quite, to me, it seems quite clear that that's the way it's heading. Now, I would have thought there'd be outcry, but look at the total mess they made of the place with spaces for people and all that sort of thing. But it just doesn't seem to register. In elections, it's as though, okay, the SNP might have completely, or Labour or whoever might have completely wrecked the street, and I can't park my car. I really hate it. But when it comes to council election dates, I'm a nationalist, so I'll vote SNP. I'm a unionist, so I'll vote for them. It's like it doesn't influence people's voting decisions. It's strange.
Yeah. For me, the restriction of movement is, I mean, I wouldn't care that much about it if that was the only thing that happened. But we live in such a surveillance state now. There are cameras everywhere. The fact that they track your movements, your car movements and everything, I'm terrified of where we're going with this. We are theoretically, they constantly know where we are through our phones. They will in the future constantly know where we are through our cars. I heard about chips being introduced in cars that pretty much monitor your car movement and stuff like that. That will be coming. There's just no doubt about it. And I'm afraid of the government. I'm at a stage where, because the government has locked us down for 3 years and they could do that for any reason again, I was I was also not a huge fan of the phone alert that we had a week ago. Um, Not because I think it's in theory a bad thing. It's because what will the first alert be? Are
Yeah,
we are
exactly.
we currently are we currently preparing for whatever Ukraine brings, or are we preparing for the next pandemic? I um
Yeah,
I
that's the
wish
key. Yeah, I just say that's the key thing. Is
I wish that the people had more power and the government had less power at the moment.
yeah.
People can call me paranoid, but I'm just absolutely scared of the government at the moment,
I mean,
terrified.
you're
Luckily,
quite right.
luckily, the Scottish government is absolutely incapable and useless. They
Thank
would be
God.
more, they would be
Yeah.
more dangerous if they were capable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think these are becoming more like ankle bracelets by the day, Philip. These phones. In fact, they're probably more technologically advanced than ankle bracelets. And you know, I heard the story the other day. Just say you've got a Tesla and you missed the payment on it, it will just drive itself away. You know, it will just drive
Yeah,
itself way back to the dealership. I'm sorry, you didn't pay the bill. Boom, it just drives itself back. I mean, that could literally feasibly the situation where your movements, maybe you watched a video that you shouldn't have watched, your house gets locked down, your car drives away, you're restricted in every way. And I think you're right to fear the government at this point, Phil, just because this is the spell they've cast on us for the last 3 years with the lockdown. And it's still residual in the country, and you can still feel it, and it's ever present now, and it
I,
is their best weapon.
I don't know if you are aware, but the FBI in America has treated parents that were against a sex education,
Yes,
explicit sex
terrorists.
education. They put them on the terror list,
Yes,
and they also the next thing that they did was they put conservative Catholics on the terror watch list. And I do know because I talked to somebody who works in the terror um, special unit in Scotland. They have an very very strong, almost exclusive focus on right wing extremism,
wow.
where I think there are more dangers coming from the left, or at least an equal amount of danger.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm worried,
Yeah.
yeah.
I share your
Yeah.
concerns.
I think that the key thing it comes down to is trust in the government, doesn't it?
Yes,
I mean, all like mobile phone data, all this stuff. It must be fantastic for the police if you're trying to
yeah,
track down some murderer and you can see every shop he went to, you can see where he went. I mean, it's fantastic. But on the other hand, as you say, it can be used for all sorts of other reasons. The other thing that worries me about all this digitization of things is what happens in the event of some sort of disaster and the electricity supply is cut off or something. Okay, that would be, I mean, even 100 years ago, well, 50 years ago, that would have been a big problem. But now,
it would
like,
be
you haven't got
pandemonium.
any money. You can't go to your shop and buy
Pandemonium.
anything.
Yeah.
You'd have total society collapse. I don't know if you saw a few months ago as well, someone was proposing putting some sort of thing in cars so it constantly reported your driving to the
Yes.
police, basically. So for a start, your car wouldn't speed. Yeah, you put your foot down, it just won't do it because it knows what the speed limit is. And it just monitors your car driving all the time. And some people were, MPs actually were opposing it, saying this will be the end of basically the luxury or sports car market. It's an important part of the economy and it will just be dead. Will be killed off overnight. But you can see in Scotland, if someone came along and said, we can put a chip in cars, and it'll reduce accidents by 7%. I mean, it would just fly through totally unopposed.
Yeah.
They would all think that
Absolutely.
this is obviously a good thing to do because freedom and the sort of self-sufficiency, those sort of things, they just don't count for anything in the Scottish Parliament. They're just swept aside. And if it makes something slightly safer or helps the police or something, then we're going to get it.
The thing is, I don't think that there has ever been a more anxious society than the one that we have now. So, and I think they are obviously through the education system that is all about feelings and all about mental health and care. I think they're being more and more pushed into anxiousness. And so as we created a society that is based on fear, and as soon as you can promise them safety, they will say yes.
Yeah.
That's just where we are, and people don't understand the value of freedom anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you've read Frank Furedi's book, Culture Affairs. Really, really good. It says the assumption now is that in any situation, reduce it's just taken for granted that taking the safer option is just always the right thing to do. That's always the direction you've got to go in, and it's true. It's true. That's the way everything goes in. It's just a natural assumption. It said politically, it said there's nothing more powerful than allaying people's fears. If you present a positive vision of the future, well, so if you get people scared of something and then say we can solve the problem for you, then that really gets them. Which makes me think about climate change. Now, I'm not committing some terrible logical fallacy here in claiming that man-made climate change isn't real because of this principle, but it does show its political power. It enables politicians to say, right, basically we're all doomed. We're the saviors. We can protect you from this. Mm-hmm. Then it's very hard for any other message to compete with that.
Yeah,
and this is why the Greens pick up so many voters. I mean, they scare the youth. If you're telling the youth that the planet's going to die in 5 years' time, and you've got a wee 15-year-old here now, well, I've only got 5 years to live. That's not fair. Of course they're going to be raging. All those the benefit of wisdom and having lived a bit, we understand that to be totally hogwash. The Earth's not going anywhere. And if I think the Earth could shrug humanity off in an instant if it wanted to, really, I don't think we have much, if any, bearing on climate change. I think we could everyone wants a greener planet. Everyone wants to reduce pollution, but we don't want to restrict every day-to-day activity and all our lives to sort of get to that goal, especially when us as a country is so minimal in terms of our carbon output as compared to China, who's building coal power plants every week. I mean, it just does not add up. We'll just sacrifice our way of life and allow other countries, developing or not developing, to just burn as much fossil fuels as possible. So it means
the changes people often consider to their personal life, like unplugging your phone charger or getting a different sort of card or whatever. Yeah. There's some things where even if everyone on the planet did them, the influence on climate change would be absolutely minuscule. Yeah. But the culture's developed where if people feel they have to be doing something, even though if you look at the numbers, it's not actually making a difference. So yeah, there's a lot of irrationality.
I think smart environmentalism is actually something that could bring the far left and the far right together, because
you're right. You're right.
The like people that actually care about the environment on the left side, they would say grow things locally, use local produce, stuff that isn't genetically altered. And you actually can hear very similar things on people on the right. They're like, well, keep things British, keep things local, stick to traditions, bring back how we used to do things. So actually, if there was a real will for more environmentally approaches, then the left and the right could actually work together. But I don't think that's the point. The point of environmentalism is division and manipulating people and controlling people rather than actually doing something for the environment, because we could do more, but I don't think that smart solutions and effective solutions are really wanted. What is wanted are solutions that funnel a lot of money into lobby groups and certain industries.
I must say, Philip, you're absolutely nailing it tonight. Absolutely nailing it to the wall.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
If anyone wants to look into this, I would recommend the book False Alarm by Bjorn Lomborg. It's very, very interesting. He believes in man-made climate change. He believes it's a problem, but he looks at the ways governments are going about tackling it and says just they're absolutely clueless. Yeah. They're doing things that either don't work or are grossly inefficient, and they ignore things that would be much more effective. It's all driven by short-termism and fashion, international fashion.
Of course.
Right, I think on that note, our hour has gone. Thank you very much for your comments. Thanks, Phil and Niall. A lively hour, as I knew it would be. So great to see you. Great to hear from you. Thanks for everyone watching as well. And hope to see you soon.
See you all.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening.